The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Catch a creative vibe on the Urban Kube with Sister Shemiza.
Good morning and Assalamu Alaikum. It's 10 o'clock, Monday, 2nd of September, and you're listening to Shemiza on the Urban Kube, taking it all the way up to 12 o'clock this morning. It's been a while. It's great to be back. Thank you for staying in my company this morning. We're going out to the lovely people of Luton surrounding areas and Peterborough and Sheffield this morning too. You can catch the conversation on a Facebook Live, and we've got lots to talk about this morning. I've got guests joining me locally and nationally this morning over the phone, and they'll be sharing with me some interesting topics from climate change and Hajj, climbing 3 mountain peaks in 24 hours, and some military history as well. So it's all happening on the show this morning. Now, folks, it's sending the kids back to school time. I think some children have already gone back. Have your children gone back? How are you feeling about that? I know lots of parents that I know are kind of ticking off the calendar till the kids go back, but I know other parents are feeling slightly like saddened that the children are going back. Maybe it's down to the school run, because the school run, oh my goodness, it's been absolutely wonderful having 6 weeks of no school run. I did not realise how much it took out of me. Are you one of those parents? Are you glad that your child is going back to school, or are you feeling that you're gonna miss them? Contact us on 07779481822 to join in with any of the conversations this morning. Now, interestingly enough, I came across an article which looked at a father who had created an app which automatically, once downloaded on his son's phone, locks the child out if he doesn't respond to his text. What a fantastic app. I've just given my daughter a new phone, and I know she will communicate with me when needed, but just in case, I might be tempted to download this app, just in case she doesn't respond. Is that something that you would be wanting to kind of download on your children's phone? Do your children actually text you in conversation, as a conversation, while sitting in the same room? Do you have family members that do that? I think maybe it needs to be locked down and everybody should be speaking and communicating face to face. It has been a glorious summer break. The weather has been up and down. This morning it felt a little bit chilly. It felt like winter, and it was a little bit dark outside as well. So winter seems to be creeping up, or autumn seems to be creeping up on us. Folks, if you've tuned in, it is the Urban Kube show. I'm taking you all the way up to 12 o'clock this morning. Now, I've got a wonderful panel of guests joining me on the show. They're actually joining me over the phone, not in the studio, guys. I'm firstly joined by Maria Zafar from Islamic Relief, and she's discussing how climate change is going to rapidly impact the way pilgrims will perform Hajj in the future. This is quite worrying. So we'll be speaking to her about how exactly is climate change going to be affecting those pilgrims that are going to be doing Hajj. She'll be joining me at 10:10. Then I'm going to be joined by a very well-known name and voice by many that listen into the show, in particularly the Rise and Shine show this morning. You would have heard him. It is no other than local entrepreneur and community activist Bilal Hussain. Now, Bilal is doing the 3 Peak Challenge. Yes, people, 3 Peaks Challenge. And he's going to be trekking on the 3 highest mountains in Scotland, England, and Wales. Now, this is 23 miles of climbing. It is a very, very high ascent, and it's 24 hours to complete the challenge. And the reason why he's doing this is to provide and raise awareness of a local charity, a respite charity for local children. It is a charity that supports special care for disabled children in our community. So he's doing this to raise money in order to create a dedicated centre in Luton for the needs of these children. Very, very humble and worthy cause. And he's going to be joining me after 10:30 to share with us this challenge. I'm really quite excited to speak to him, because I think climbing up the steps for me is hard work. And this brother is not doing steps. He's doing a lot of steps, but not on one mountain, but three. And these are the three highest mountains in Scotland, England, and Wales in 24 hours, people. It's Ben Nevis, Scaffold Pikes and Snowdon in 24 hours. And the whole purpose of this is to help raise awareness and fundraise for a local disability and respite service, PHOBE. And he's looking to raise up to 20,000 is his target, mashallah. And this is a service that I think is very well known to many, many individuals across generations, across Luton. And it's definitely a worthy cause, because from what I have known as a teacher at Luton Sixth Form College, I've had the pleasure of knowing so many young people who've actually volunteered at Friends of Bright Eyes. There isn't anybody, any community activist that I don't know of in Luton that hasn't volunteered at Friends of Bright Eyes. So this is a charity that is very, very dear to many, many people. People that have actually had family members be involved and be given the care, or they've provided voluntary service at this space. It has been a wonderful, wonderful space for young people to gain lots and lots of skills, and actually help them get to university as well through the work experience they've done at Friends of Bright Eyes. An absolutely fabulous, fabulous service, and a need for our disabled children in our community. So I'm really looking forward to speaking to Bilal very, very shortly. Now, Bilal has also come back from Hajj, mashallah, with his wonderful wife, and I believe his children also participated in part of the journey too. So I'd be really looking forward to finding out his experience and his thoughts on Hajj and climate change, and why we really need to kind of take note of how this is going to impact the future. It already is. Climate change is greatly impacting the future, but now it's also going to be impacting on the way we perform Hajj too. So I'll be joined by Maria Zafar very, very shortly. Now, after 11:30, I'm joined by another tremendous guest, and he's going to be discussing the contribution of Muslims and South Asians in World War II. And I'm going to be discussing this with military historian and former University of Birmingham lecturer and social political commentator Jahan Mahmood. Now, Jahan is a historian who's also a counter-terrorism specialist. He's advised the Home Office and the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst. He'll be joining me today to share the military contribution and influence of Muslims in the war effort of World War II, and how this knowledge can counteract the negative narrative around immigration, Islamophobia and racism in 2019 Brexit Britain. We will also be discussing his role around counter-terrorism, in particular the prevent strategy, and why it hasn't been effective in engaging with Muslims and why it needs to change. We'll also be talking to him and why he feels it's critical for more Muslims to engage with the media professionally and represent their voices and narratives. So that will be Jahan Mahmood, who's going to be joining us from Birmingham today. And he'll be speaking to me about some very, very interesting but very, very significant points and topics. We're going back in history. We're looking at history and looking towards the future. And he's going to be sharing his knowledge in a variety of areas, and in particular his work around military history and the way it's impacting the world that we live in today. So looking forward to speaking to Jahan Mahmood on the Urban Kube this morning. Now, guys, if you want to get involved with any of the conversations that we're having today, we are on Facebook as well. The camera isn't live on Facebook. However, you can leave your comments on the comment box, and anything that you want to find out further information about, or any questions that you have around climate change and Hajj, phobes and this the Friends of Bright Eyes charity and disability, as well as this challenge that Bilal Hussain is going to be doing, or anything around counter-terrorism, prevent, and military history with Jahan Mahmood as well. So lots of conversations to be had on the show today. Now, it is 10:10, and I'm going to be joined by a very, very delightful young lady who is playing a very significant role in working as a community and campaign coordinator at Islamic Relief. I've had the pleasure of speaking to her in the past about her role in Islamic Relief and how to use her role to engage the wider community on social issues that matter to all of us. Now, today she's going to be talking to us about a very, very significant part of our faith, and that is Hajj. And this is a duty upon all Muslims, and it's for many it's already aspired, for others they're waiting for the call to go towards Hajj. Now, we've had many of our brothers and sisters return from Hajj, mashallah, so Hajj Mubarak to all of those that had made the blessed journey. But what's been very, very interesting to hear and read in the press of late is the fact that Hajj and our journey and performing Hajj is actually becoming quite worrying in the sense in relation to climate change and the impact it's going to have on the way we perform Hajj outdoors. On the line this morning is Maria Zafar from Islamic Relief to tell us more. Assalamu alaikum, Maria.
Walaikum salam.
Thank you so very much for joining with us, Maria. I understand that you are a very, very busy lady, so thank you for giving me your time. Maria, I'm very, very quite concerned about how climate change can actually pose danger for Muslim pilgrimages.
Mm-hmm. So I'd just like to start off by saying that, climate change is not something distant. It's going to affect all aspects of human activity as well. And our pilgrimage Hajj is no exception. I think what we're looking at here is, just to keep it very brief, is that, we understand that Hajj has certain rituals which are physical and involve walking long distances. Most of them is outside, and climate change will affect that. We've been working, Islamic Relief has been working with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and what we found is that with the temperatures increasing and climate change obviously taking effect, the temperature and the humidity in Saudi will become so much so that the actual pilgrimage itself would become hazardous to humans. And we just want to reiterate this fact to our Muslim community and sort of say, as much as it is our faith to look after the planet, we need to recognize that if we don't take action, things that we love and cherish about our religion and our sort of duty as Muslims will also be affected. So that's the sort of crux of it.
And do you think this is a bit of a wake-up call for all of us as Muslims, generally as humans, but as Muslims, that, this is going to really, really affect our, one of the most significant elements of our faith. But what can we actually do about this, though? How can we as Muslims, reduce or slow down climate change?
So essentially, there's two things you can do. So the first obvious one is reach out to your local MP and sort of say to them, what can we do? What are the finances and policies that you can put in place, urging the government to sort of put climate change on top of the political agenda. But on the sort of more day-to-day basis, we need to recognize that this is a global planet. What we do each and every day is having an effect on countries all over the world. So things like, let's reduce our meat, let's go walking instead. It sounds like, how is this having an effect? But essentially everything adds up, and we need to sort of see the Muslim community take leadership on this and sort of be advocates for climate change, as is prescribed by a religion, really.
Now, in Ramadan, I saw a real drive to make Ramadan as green, as clean as possible. But since Ramadan is over, it seems we're back to our normal routine again. And I understand Islamic Relief has been quite at the forefront of trying to keep this change, this lifestyle continuous. So what advice would you give to somebody struggling? Is there anywhere that you can actually access information on how to be more climate friendly?
So right now we're seeing this amazing shift, and if you look across the media, there is not a platform that is not talking about climate change. Information is rampant. All you need to do is as simple as type into Google, how can I be more eco-friendly? How can I go onto our website, Islamic Relief? We have lots of content on there which sort of talks about climate change and faith perspective. But I think on a day-to-day basis, we're not asking you to go vegan overnight. We're not asking for that. We're asking for small changes that you can make in your lifestyle that will have a sort of effect on the bigger global scale. And it's recognizing the sort of, I think often we forget the link. A lot of us, well, for me, especially being South Asian, I have family in Pakistan, it's recognizing making the link as well, that what I'm doing every day is going to have an effect worldwide, but also the people that I care about overseas. And it's making that link.
Because over last weekend, we saw the Amazon rainforest fires, that had really shocked a lot of people. And that kind of started creating conversations. It started getting people to think and be a little bit more conscious about what, the changes in their lifestyle. But I never would have associated Hajj and climate change. I really never, honestly, I'm being very, very honest here. And it's actually made me feel a lot more self-aware of what's going on around me. So that fire and this article, for me, it's had an impact. But I don't know, it'd be lovely to find out from our listeners if you've faced a change, if you've changed your lifestyle, or hearing this has had an impact on you. Now, what's significant is the fact that because we're following the lunar calendar, Hajj will be in the summertime. In some years. So this is the reason why you're quite concerned, and this research has been done. It's like when it does hit summertime, that's when it's going to get very, very serious.
Yeah, so essentially what the research shows is that, more years than not, the temperature will exceed the extreme danger threshold. And I don't want to get involved too much in the technicalities here, but what that means is that just for humans to function in that temperature will be very difficult. And it's no surprise or shock to anyone that Hajj already is very hard already at this moment. But with the added temperature and the humidity, it's going to be, as much as we're going to want to fulfill our pilgrimage, it's just going to be not possible given the circumstances. This is why we need to take a proactive effort, not just for ourselves, but if we want our children, the future generations to be able to do the pilgrimage, essentially.
Now, has this information gone over to Hajj itself and those people that are in charge of the space of when Hajj is performed? Are they aware of this information, and are they putting strategies in place to make it safer?
Essentially, what all I can advocate for is that this is a global issue, and every single country has a responsibility. As much as the UK has a responsibility, Saudi has a responsibility, and every country needs to get on board with this. This is the thing, we can't exclude and blame or whatnot. Everybody has a stake in this, and everybody should be taking action.
Now, Maria, your role is quite significant in educating communities. What other areas are you actually looking at to campaign and mobilise the Muslim community?
So we have lots going on, and one of the ways I think you could definitely get involved is by keeping up to date with our social media. We have the sort of global youth strike happening later this month. We're going to be engaged in the global strikes. So it's all about keeping aware of what's sort of present in your surrounding areas. We have things from eco-friendly lunches to discussion tables and lots of things going on, not just exclusively to Islamic Relief. But I'd say if you want to be involved with Islamic Relief, you want to be sort of involved in our campaigning, it's as simple as dropping us a line on social media, or even reaching out to me if that's what people want to do. But definitely sort of get on with this sort of momentum at the moment. We can all be Greta Thunbergs in our own lives. We can all do something for the environment, really.
And how can people actually get in touch with Islamic Relief? What is their full Twitter? Is it Twitter handle or social handles for it?
So we have a social media platform. So it's simple as tweeting at us, or I have my own social media handle. So all you have to do is go on our website or on our social media and drop us a text or a line.
Could you tell us what is the actual line?
Yeah. So the email to sort of get in contact is campaign at islamic-relief.org.uk. That's if you have any inquiries or if you want to partake in any campaigns with me. That's the sort of email to get in contact with. But a more easier way is just to drop us a line on social media if you want a sort of urgent response.
Fantastic. Now I understand you're heading back to work this morning.
Yes.
Thank you so very much for joining us and actually telling us or making us aware of how climate change could pose a danger for Muslim pilgrims really going performing Hajj. Thank you so very much, Maria, for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much, Shemiza.
You're very, very welcome. Take care, Saigon. So that was Maria Zafar joining us from Islamic Relief to tell us, make us aware of how climate change can actually impact our Hajj and performing Hajj, especially when performing the rituals outside, and it will get very, very hot. And we already know that a lot of our elderly perform Hajj as well, and we have our disabled brothers and sisters that go out there too to perform Hajj. So these are conditions that may be very, very difficult for them to kind of perform a successful Hajj. So she's contacting, she's on the show today to actually inform us and give us some insight to what this research has basically suggested. And the research is clearly indicating that in the future, Hajj will become quite difficult to perform because of the heat. If it's in the summertime, then it is the heat will impact the role. Folks, you're listening to the Urban Cube, and I've actually been do you know what? I'm in absolute I shouldn't be surprised. I actually shouldn't be surprised about what I'm hearing because it's a global issue, but it's really made me quite concerned. Concerned because we often hear of, unfortunately, incidents at Hajj where there's been stampedes, people have got hurt, and just imagine it being extremely hot in that condition and being in a stampede is quite worrying. I've got Brother Tariq in the studio. Brother Tariq, I was just listening to Sister Maria talking about the impact of climate change and Hajj. Listening into that, what's your thoughts?
To be honest, exactly what you're just saying there. In regards the whole concept of the heat getting worse and worse. I was actually speaking to Brother Bilal, who you'll be speaking to after the break, regarding Hajj. He actually just came back a couple of weeks ago, and I was asking him the question around how Hajj generally, having spoken to a number of people who have been preparing to go to Hajj, come back and haven't spoken about Hajj, and how kind of physically demanding that journey is, and it's really a difficult journey for many. But Brother Bilal's thoughts, to be honest, were completely the opposite. He actually felt physically the journey isn't so difficult. What he was saying was there's actually a really, really spiritual difficulty in the journey itself, obviously, when you go there. And he was talking about the concept of dua, and he goes, normally when you pray, you may make dua for 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. In Ramadan, it might be slightly longer. He goes, on the day of Arafat, when you're there for 5 to maybe 6 hours, and you continuously just making dua, he goes, spiritually and mentally it's really overpowering and sometimes really difficult. But to be honest, he was saying from a physical perspective, as long as you're mildly physically fit, and again Bilal I think has to be doing the 3 weeks challenge,
of course.
He's saying and you go from Europe, to be honest, I think he was saying there's actually a benefit in being in the European campsites, because obviously there's different camps and the access that you have being a lot closer and stuff, it's actually not that difficult. But saying that, as listening to Maria's conversation, with, I think sometimes what we don't get to understand as individuals out there is the impact that we have on our community and our society and the weather itself. And again, even if you look at the weather now here in the UK, the summers are sometimes really, really hot and we can't take it, where the winters are really, really cold and we can't take it. And it's both the extremes.
British weather can't make its mind up. But she has made me think very deeply about my actions and how eco-friendly I need to be. And I really am kind of working on how to improve my lifestyle because it's just getting really, really worrying when you hear, when you read and you hear news stories telling you that we've only got 12 years to kind of try and create a slow change. Well, it's a slow change. It will be a very, very slow change, but to reduce the impact. Is that feasible? Is that possible? Are we taking it seriously? We are seeing a number of, supermarkets changing their rulings around plastic and making fresh fruit plastic free. Plastic straws have been replaced by paper straws, and even workplaces are now encouraging people to kind of, bring their own flasks and reusable cups to work and walk more. Lots to talk about, which I'm going to be sharing with Brother Bilal, who's going to be joining me after the break to talk about his 3 Peaks challenge, but also going to be talking about his experience at Hajj and his charity work too. Thank you very much, Brother Tariq, for contributing there. Folks, you're still listening to the Urban Cube. We are heading off to a break. After the break, I'm, as promised, joined by Brother Bilal Hussain. He's a local entrepreneur, got to say that right, and community activist, and we'll be talking about his challenge and his journey from Hajj. Assalamu alaikum. Join me straight after this.
Inspire FM on 105.1 FM. Catch a creative vibe on the Urban Cube with Sister Shemiza.
Good morning and assalamu alaikum. It is 10:30 exactly, Monday 2nd of September, and you're listening to me, Shemiza, taking all the way up to 12 o'clock on the Urban Cube. We're going live and direct to the lovely folk of Luton surrounding areas and to the awesome listeners in Peterborough on Salam Radio and Sheffield and Link FM. You can catch the conversation on Facebook Live as well. We don't have the camera on in the studio. It's just the little sign that we put up for Urban Cube. But you can leave any comments on the comment section regarding today's show. Repeat of the show will be 8 p.m. as always, and you can catch us also on a podcast which goes out straight after the show. Now, this morning I've had the pleasure of being joined by Maria Zafar, who is from Islamic Relief, and she is the community and campaigns coordinator in mobilizing local and national communities around social issues and fundraising. And one of the issues that she talked about on today's show was Hajj and climate change. And interestingly, talking about how climate change is going to affect the way pilgrims will be performing their rituals in Mecca. So she talked about how research in America, which was done in California, actually discussed how climate change is increasing the risk in coming years, and the conditions of heat and humidity in the areas of Saudi Arabia where the Hajj takes place could worsen to the point that people face extreme danger and from harmful health effects. Now, 20 to 30 hours is spent actually being outside in the open air. And when Hajj hits the summertime, it will be extremely hot for the just a normal, healthy individual. But just imagine the elderly and the sick having to perform in that heat. Now, she has talked to us about it being a global issue and how we should be working together as communities, as Muslims, to try and change our lifestyles. So, because our lifestyles do have a ripple effect on like climate change. So she spoke to us and kind of how what we should be doing and how we should be actually prioritizing environmental and eco issues as something to kind of present to our local MPs and make this conversation at the forefront. Recently, you may have seen, if you've observed social media or if you're watching the news, the number of fires across America and the Amazon rainforest, South America, the Amazon rainforest, and it was really, really, really heartbreaking to see. But this is not just exclusive to the rainforest. There's been fires across the world. We've also just seen my thoughts and prayers to to the communities and citizens of the Bahamas. We've just seen a awful hurricane there and flooding happening presently, and it's just continuous. And as Maria rightly said, as Muslims, we should be considering the environment as our responsibility, because the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was somebody that really embraced the environment in his journey as becoming a Muslim, mashallah. So, folks, you're listening to the Urban Cube. If you'd like to join in with any of the conversations discussed on the show, then feel free to do so. WhatsApp me on 07779481822. We're talking climate change on the show today. We're also talking about the mountains, but three of the highest mountains in Scotland and England and Wales. It's the Three Peaks Challenge being done in 24 hours by no other than Bilal Hussain. Bilal will be joining me very, very shortly to share his experience of Hajj and the environment as well. He'll be joining me in about 5 minutes or so, and then he'll also be talking about his Three Peaks Challenge after 11 as well. After 11:30, I'm joined by a very, very interesting and poignant guest. He is no other than Jahan Mahmood. Now, Jahan is a military historian who is also a former lecturer at Birmingham University, and he is somebody who has advised the Home Office and also the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst. Now, he'll be joining me today to share the military contribution and influence of Muslims in the war effort of World War II, and how this knowledge can counteract the negative narrative around immigration, Islamophobia and racism in 2019 Brexit Britain. We will also be discussing his role around the counter-terrorism prevent strategy and why it hasn't been effective in engaging with Muslims and why it needs to change, and also why he feels it's critical for more Muslims to engage with the media professionally and represent their voices and narrative. Interestingly enough, yesterday it was 80 years since World War II, and so it's going to be very interesting to hear Jahan's knowledge and understanding on how 80 years ago Muslims actually helped fight for the freedoms of this country. And democracy is a really interesting thing at the moment, especially in light of Boris Johnson's decision, which I'm going to talk a little bit later after 11:30. But just before then, we're joined by no other than a local entrepreneur and community activist, Brother Bilal Hussain. Assalamu alaikum, Bilal.
Walaikum salam. How are you, Shemiza?
I'm very, very well. Now, brother, it doesn't seem very long ago you were on the Rise and Shine show this morning with Brother Tariq. So thank you for joining us back again.
No problem, no problem.
Now, before we talk about your Three Peaks Challenge, which we're going to do after 11, we wanted to kind of get your experience of Hajj in light of what we've been speaking to Maria Zafar about, and the fact that it's going to be quite hazardous Hajjis in respect of climate change. So did you... go ahead.
Yeah, so I returned 2 weeks ago.
Mashallah.
And I briefly spoke to Tariq this morning about my Hajj experience, and I didn't really touch on the environmental side of it with Tariq, because I was saving it for your show.
Thank you.
But absolutely. I mean, I echo everything Maria said. There's a huge amount of plastic waste in Hajj. I mean, it's a phenomenal. I mean, I've not seen that much plastic ever.
Wow.
In one place.
Okay.
It was plastic waste, I should say. And this ain't being recycled. This is just
left there,
on the side of the road. It's just there. And it's a phenomenal amount. I mean, I'm talking, and I distinctly remember this because me and the guy I was with, when we were walking on the day of Arafat, people get confused because they expect when they go to Arafat, this big mountain, the Mount of Arafat. But in fact, Jabal Rahma, as it's known, the Mount of Mercy, is a small little hill, but it's actually a big plain. So it's a big open area with tents dotted around. But we wanted to see the mountain, or the Mount of Arafat. So we were walking down, and as you walk past the European camps, you walk through the Asian camps, and where they actually collect all the bottles. And we were, I would say, halfway up my shin deep in plastic bottles and plastic and paper waste.
Wow.
And it was a sight I'd never forget.
Why were you so shocked to see that? What were you assuming?
I don't think I didn't think about it. You don't think about it, do you? I mean, the thing is, when you're going Hajj, you're obviously on a spiritual journey, so your mind isn't really ready. I think the reason why it hit me more than anything is because there's a huge eco drive at the minute, just generally around the globe, and so there should be. And it was just the amount of you just not seen. It kind of hit home, the whole eco drive thing, thinking, oh my God, we shouldn't be using this much plastic and all the rest of it, which, to be honest, at home we've been pretty good at over the last few months. But it's just shocking. You just do not expect that amount of plastic. And literally, we were kicking through plastic bottles to walk. It was crazy. You know how you do when you were a kid in autumn and you're kicking leaves?
Gosh.
It was like that. Literally, it was a crazy.
So nobody was taking responsibility of disposing of the plastic effectively. It was just thrown away.
Absolutely, it was thrown. And obviously, the authorities were picking it up and getting rid of it. They were doing a great job of getting rid of the plastic. But I don't think that's the point. I think the point is, there must be a better way of managing the waste, rather than having plastic bottles, for example. I don't know whether they could do water fountains and encourage people to use.
And I think it's really quite saddening to hear, but the fact is it's something I've never heard before. You've brought this to our knowledge, and I think something does need to be done about it. And so this is a great starting point. Now, you're somebody that's quite impactful and influential. So what would you do about it? Who would you contact to try and create this change and trying to encourage future pilgrims to kind of, cut back on the use of plastic? Who should be taking the responsibility?
Firstly, we all have a responsibility, because with any change, and throughout history, it always starts at the bottom. You have these great leaders, who can talk about change and all the rest of it. But I always feel that change kind of starts at the bottom, and our own habits need to change generally. Just as people, our habits change, and those habits influence people above us, and it's then like a ripple effect. I think that's important. Understanding the need to be conscious about the amount of plastic we use, and that was the biggest factor, because it was literally thrown as you would rubbish, and that's not the mentality. You can't be. It's just not the way we're going to get anywhere like this. It's just not going to happen.
And you wouldn't expect that in a space like Hajj, which is sacred, and this is about your spiritual cleansingness and being closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then cluttering this space just seems quite...
I don't think people meant to do that.
Okay.
I think because it became a habit, so they saw a pile of plastic and they just threw it because they saw a pile.
They felt that was the bin, that was where it should go.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think it's a case of, and there are people who are, aren't as educated about it, and
of course
all the rest of it. I get that, but we're talking about a concentration of. I think it's the official figures are something like 3.5 million. But they say the unofficial figures are closer to 4.5 million.
Wow.
So it's a concentration of 4.5 million people in an area at one time in sort of 50-degree heat, who want water, who need water.
Yes.
And they are drinking water, like you do. So I think that's the starting point as a community, global community. We need to change the way we think. and the way we see plastic. And then we have really good NGOs like Islamic Relief and Maria, who you were speaking to earlier, who we can sort of lobby and use their leverage to lobby, against. Okay, what can we do to support this as an NGO, for example, support the Hajis. But yeah, another very prominent figure, Mr. Shahid Koyes. Funny, he was also at Hajj this year. So as we were walking back from Jabal Rahma, I bumped into Shahid. So I was like, oh, Shahid, mashallah. So he also, he was there, and I remember him commenting on the same thing.
Wow.
Shahid Koyes, that is. So he, and it was very evident. It was like in your face. And it was sad. But then you think, well, what do people do? How do you manage this? And there isn't really an answer. I can't give an answer to that, and I'm sure you can't as well, Shemiza.
No, and I think you're correct in saying is how is it to be managed? And these are things to look into in the future, is knowing who to correspond with and how to support them in putting something, strategic, I'm losing all my words today, and sustainable, and something that they can stick with. But I'm sure you're not the only person that would have noticed that. You've said Shahid has as well. Was there anything else environmentally that you felt was quite noteworthy or something to possibly look into for the future for Hajis?
I think the authorities do a great job. I know there's a lot of negative talk about the Saudis and all the rest of it, but to be honest, I think they do a great job. And they were doing a great job in accommodating and facilitating as much as they could. The food waste is a problem, especially when you're in Mina. Food waste and just general recycling, and how people manage their recycling, or their waste, I should say. They were the key areas when we talk about the environment I noticed. Other than that, if I'm completely honest, I thought that the authorities, like I said, they do a fantastic job, but there is a huge concentration of people. I mean, come on, 3.5, 4 million people.
That is a lot of people, and it seems to be more and more people are making the pilgrimage every year, mashallah, and may this calling be given to many more. Now, you went with your family, and the experience must have been absolutely tremendous for them. Any advice you could give to any of our listeners that may be performing Hajj next year?
Correction from earlier, because I was listening to you earlier, and we did not take the kids.
Oh, did you not? I swear, did I see the children? Was it? That must have been their other trip, because you guys did a trip prior to going to Hajj.
We
okay.
Run the show, weren't we, in Easter?
Yes.
No, so it was. They didn't go. Just me and Sarah went. Me and the wife.
Mashallah.
My advice. Oh God, advice would be try and go as early as possible, as quick as you can to Hajj. It's been. Go when you're young. Well, you're relatively fit, I should say, and go and fulfill. If you've got the means, go and fulfill your obligation as quick as possible, and you will not regret it. You will have no regrets. Go as soon as you can. Like I said, for the Europeans, this is a bit of a sticky point. For the European camps are generally better maintained during the days for the days of Hajj. The hotels in Medina and in Mecca are generally good as well for the people who travel from Europe. Even I would say you don't have to go for some plush VIP package. Just a normal sort of general package gets you in good places, and the Europeans generally are well looked after. So, like I was telling Tariq earlier, those elements of it for me were not, yes, they were hard. I mean, a 3-hour walk in 50-degree heat from Mina to Mecca is not easy. However, you wouldn't say it was, oh my God, I couldn't get up for 2 days or whatever. Alhamdulillah, you're fine. So for Europeans, it's not as challenging as it is for other countries and other continents. the spiritual and mental aspect for me was the challenging part. That was, another level of difficult. So yeah, that's my advice. Try and go as soon as possible.
Because what we're seeing like, whilst I was growing up, I always associated Hajj with the elderly. It was more
Absolutely.
the elderly that went to do Hajj. That I didn't see or hear of anyone in their 20s or 30s going. And we're seeing a lot more younger individuals going. But it does make a lot of sense that to go when you're a lot healthier, so that you can perform it, especially if the weather or climate change and it gets really, really hot, and it will do, because Hajj will be in future years in the summertime, and it will get very, very warm. So it just makes a lot of sense to try and do that as soon as, especially if you're an older person, to go out. But, it's whatever is your calling as well. Not everybody has the means and is able to leave.
So, the means, Hajj is not cheap. Even on the cheapest packages, I should say, that it's not. It's expensive.
Is it getting more and more expensive?
From what I've been told, yes. I mean, I was comparing what we paid compared to what people paid 5 years ago, 3 years ago, and it's a lot of money. It is a lot of money, but saying that if you have the means, I suggest go as soon as possible. Again, exactly like you, Shemiza, I was brought up the same way. You had to look and be this pious Uncle G, and they were the ones who went Hajj. But the best way to get close to the Almighty is to perform Hajj, in my opinion. So when you may be someone who's like me, just your average Joe, and it's the best time for you to, when you're fit and maybe generally young, it's a great time to go.
Has Hajj become a bit of a tourist spot? I've read an article which suggested this, and it kind of really shocked me that people were seeing it. There are certain people that saw it as more of a holiday destination rather than a spiritual calling or a factor as part of their religion.
I mean.
Am I being controversial here?
No, I don't think you are. I get that. I can
with all the selfies and all the video blogging.
I'm not someone who shies away from the camera and interviews and stuff. I'm fine with it. But one thing I was really uncomfortable. You notice on my friends on Facebook, I haven't got any pictures from Hajj. For me, I'm just not comfortable with it. I just didn't like the idea of sort of this. I think there's one picture I posted on Eid, just to say Hajj Mubarak and Eid Mubarak to everyone, and that was it, of me and Sarah. But I didn't, personally, I'm not comfortable with it. But when people call it a holiday or like a destination, I see what they're saying because of the hotels and, like I said, the Europeans, and if you do have a bit of money from other countries, Hajj is very comfortable. You're living it. You're staying in the best hotels. Your tents are air conditioned. You get breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So you do have all the means to make it quite a comfortable Hajj. You can, and I know other people who paid extortionate amount of money to kind of stay very close to the Jamarat where you do the stoning and going around and doing tawaf in a buggy and all those kind of things. So I've heard of these stories. I've not, in an electric buggy, like a scooter almost. So, there are things like that can be done, but
to make the journey easier, if you've got the means to, then people will.
Yeah, I'm not qualified enough to comment on those things, but I see the point. I see why people would write about that and suggest that, but again, you're going Hajj. It's about you, the Almighty, and your journey as
And I've seen some utterly tremendous, absolutely jaw-dropping stories and so humbling, where I saw a 96-year-old, I think it was a 70-year-old son going to Hajj with his 96-year-old father, side by side. Utterly beautiful. There's been cases where people have walked through countries to perform Hajj. Others have saved lifetimes of savings to perform Hajj to make it possible. That beauty and humility is tremendous, and it's so. It sets such a beautiful example to the rest of us as well, and it just kind of inspires you, and those stories really are quite something.
Yes, so that's the flip side, isn't it? We can talk about the holiday destination for people who have the means and all the rest of it, but the flip side is I saw so many people, so many people who saved a lifetime to go on this journey, and the really old, frail men and ladies. Some have brought their kids along because they had no choice, and some fascinating stories. I got to speak to loads of people, as you do, and for me, it's any excuse to have a chat with anybody. So I got spoke to lots of people, and there were some fantastic stories, some really inspiring stories, and all it does, it boosts your iman while you're there. It boosts your iman, it strengthens your belief, and on the flip side, yes, there are those people who work so hard to do this once in a lifetime journey.
What was it like for you? What was it like for you to see the actual ummah? We're heading off to a break, but the actual ummah, the diversity of the ummah. We've got about 55 seconds, Bilal.
It was incredible. It was just, the day of Arafat, there's I don't know if you're allowed to share links, but the Sheikh Umar Sulaiman, I was fortunate enough in Masjid Nabawi, I prayed on the roof and I got to spend a bit of time with him.
Well, what we're going to do is, Bilal, I'm going to carry this story onto the second half of the show, inshallah, where we're going to be talking to you about the Three Peaks Challenge, as well as this wonderful experience that you've had at Hajj. Folks, we're heading off to a break. Bilal is going to stay with us on the line. He's calling into the studio, inshallah. If you've got any questions to ask him regarding his experience of Hajj, or you want to share your experience of Hajj with us, then please do get in touch. And we're also going to be talking to him about the Three Peaks Challenge, climbing three of the highest mountains in Scotland, England and Wales. He'll be talking to us about that straight after the break. From us, till then, Assalamu alaikum.
You're listening to an Inspire FM podcast, making available our popular programs from our daily broadcast on Inspire FM.
Catch a creative vibe on the Urban Kube with Sister Shemiza.
Good morning and Assalamu alaikum. A very good morning to you. It's 11 o'clock and it's Monday, 2nd of September. I hope you've had a productive weekend and you're ready for the week ahead. Many children I think they're getting ready to get back to school. Have your children gone back to school yet? Mine are going midweek. I'm super looking forward to it. I would love to find out how you're feeling about them going back. Is it a yay or is it a nay for you? Folks, it is the Urban Kube with me, Shemiza, taking it all the way up to 12 o'clock. This morning, we've had the pleasure of listening to Maria Zafar from the Islamic Relief Charity, talking to us about climate change and how that will affect the way Hajis will do Hajj in the future because of the hazardous temperatures that if it's performed in summertime. Also joined by Bilal Hussain, who's a local entrepreneur and community activist. He was talking to us about his experience of performing Hajj and also shared with us the shock of seeing mountains of plastic just discarded, and just he was a little bit concerned on how that was going to be managed. Now, Bilal will be joining us very, very shortly, in about a minute or so's time, to talk to us a little bit more about his experience of Hajj, but also about the Three Peaks Challenge, from one mountain of Arafat to three mountains he'll be climbing to help raise much needed funds for a local charity called Friends of Bright Eyes. After speaking to Bilal, I'll be joined by another guest over the phone after 11:30, and it will be a local, not a local guest. I do beg your pardon. He is going to be talking to us all the way from Birmingham. It is Jahan Mahmood, who is a historian. His specialism is military history, and he's also a counter-terrorism specialist who advised the Home Office and Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst. He'll be joining me today to share the military contribution and influence of Muslims in the war effort of World War II, and how this knowledge can counteract the negative narrative around immigration, Islamophobia, and increasing racism in 2019 Brexit Britain. We'll be also discussing his role around counter-terrorism, especially in regards to the prevent strategy and why it hasn't been effective in engaging with Muslims and why it needs to change. Plus, he'll be talking to us why he feels it's critical for more Muslims to engage with the media professionally and represent their voices and narrative. Now, if you'd like to join with any of those conversations that we're having today, 07779481822 is the number to WhatsApp us on. Now, back to my guest. Just before the break, I was joined by no other than a local man, entrepreneur, community activist, and all-round nice guy and family man. It's no other than Bilal. Assalamu alaikum, Bilal. Oh, he's not on the line. So whilst we get him back on the line, inshallah, once again, I'll be talking to Bilal about his experience of Hajj and also this very exciting challenge that he's doing, which is the 3 Peaks Challenge, which is climbing 3 of the highest mountains in Scotland, England and Wales. And that's 23 miles of climbing. And it's I need to get this right. I don't know whether it's 30,064 meters, I think it is, in ascent, and 24 hours to complete the challenge. The mountains he will be climbing are Nevis, Scaffold Pikes and Snowdon in 24 hours. Wow. And this is to help raise awareness and fundraise for a local disability and respite service, FOB. And his purpose, we're going to find out why he's taking this challenge. And it's 24 hours, people, 3 mountains. It takes me forever to get up a pair of steps, and he's actually climbing 3 mountains in 24 hours. So really quite keen to find out how he's actually going to manage this. I'm sure you guys are curious too. The whole purpose of this challenge is to get him is to fundraise. So Bilal, are you on the line?
I'm here, sorry.
Wa alaikum salam, brother. Thank you so very much for joining us back on air. Now, just before the break, we were talking about climate change and how this is going to affect Hajj. And you spoke about the plastic mountains that you saw there. That was quite concerning. And then we sort of talked about how you experience the diversity of Hajj and the diversity and the beauty of the different races of Muslims around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see everybody, people like Muslims in like Brazil, Peru, Costa Rica, Norwegian Muslims, Swedish Muslims. I mean, literally, we were. It's like within the group, we were counting the different countries that we'd see, and there was Japanese Muslims. There was, I mean, every single country you can imagine.
How did that make you feel when you saw this beautiful multicultural faith that we have? The older I've got, it's become the norm, and it's now the norm for my children to see Muslims come in all different colours. Whilst I was growing up, I only saw Muslims as Pakistani, and they were brown, and that's it.
Yeah, the only Pakistanis were Muslim. Yeah,
that's it. How ignorant was I? I need to get out more.
I was the same. I was absolutely the same. Only Pakistanis were Muslim. But yeah, it's like I said, it strengthens your iman. It makes you, it strengthens your faith. It's massively inspiring. So it actually gets you through the days of Hajj.
Wow.
And it like self-reflection and all those things. When you come back, it completely. I wouldn't say completely, but it does. The contemplation and reflection is massive. So when you come back, you're a lot more aware of what's going on around you.
So you've changed as a person. You feel that you have changed as a person.
Have I changed as a person? Do you know what? I'm not going to say I have. I think I've improved certain aspects of my life. I think change is a quite a strong word. And it's quite easy to say as well. I've changed now because I've come back from Hajj. I don't think that's between you and the Almighty. But I think I've improved. I've absolutely. I'm a lot more aware of what's going on around me in all aspects of my life, whether that be my children, my parents, or just generally like this disability centre that we'll be talking about. A lot more aware and conscious of what is happening around me and how. And because we've seen so many people and so many different people at Hajj, you're conscious of how much we have and how little other people have.
Wow. Because you would have seen that disparity, even though everyone is equal in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we go there, we should be all equal. But there was a bit of disparity that you may have seen too. Now, so your purpose is now a lot different, but you've always had purpose, mashallah. You've always been passionate about giving to others, and in particular the needy. And mashallah, that faith that you've developed there, you're using that faith from Hajj now to climb up these mountains. You're climbing up 3 peaks. Challenge, the 3 peaks challenge. I mean, I thought one was enough. Why 3? What is going on, Bilal? Why 3?
Because the national. The 3 Peaks challenge is a thing, so it's not. We're not mad. We're not just doing it because we're a bunch of lunatics.
Okay, so you didn't make it up.
No, we didn't make it up. Okay. The 3 Peaks challenge does exist. I'd love to tell you that it's a thing and it's only for us, but it's not. It's actually a thing. People are crazy enough to do it. Why are we doing it? We're doing it because we're just a bunch of lads from Luton, the Beardy Hikers.
The Beardy Hikers. Tell us more.
The Beardy Hikers. So it's we're all foodies, aren't we? So we watch the Hairy Bikers, who you'd probably heard of. Hairy Bikers.
Yes.
So why do we? So it was a spin on the name of Hairy Bikers. We're all foodies. We like, we watch the Hairy Bikers, and we thought, okay, why don't we call ourselves the Beardy Hikers? So that's where the name come from. And then we also have another group who aren't as they're a bit more underground than us, to call the Summit Squad, and a few of them are pretty good climbers. So they've done the Ben Nevis, Scaffold. I don't think that many of them have done all 3 before, but they are pretty good at what they do. So they'll also be joining us. So that's where the name come from. The idea is quite simple. We're quite all passionate. Very passionate about this disability centre that we're hoping to set up in Luton, supporting Friends of Bright Eyes, as all the listeners know. It's a fantastic charity that offers respite care to children and adults across Luton. Huge demand, huge need for a service like this, a dedicated service like this, and that's basically it. And I'm really trying. I know you've got my link. Please share, listeners.
Do tell us where people can get access to this link. Do you have a particular page? Is it called Beardy Hikers?
It's called. So we have a Beardy Hikers page, and we're all feeding into it. So I'll give you my link. I think I've already sent you. Tariq also has my link. Please share it on your page, Facebook page, or your WhatsApp or whatever it is. Please share it so that the listeners can hopefully click on and donate.
And how much are you wanting to raise? You've got 7% at the moment, and that's like £1,400. And
yeah, there you go. So I have a personal target of £20,000.
So that's your individual target.
That's my individual target of £20,000. The reason why I've set it quite high compared to others is because I'm confident with some of the pledges I've had as well, that I will reach that target, and it will go a huge way, because the overall target is about £100,000.
Right.
Because if you can imagine trying to set up a centre in Luton, there's a lot of equipment that's required.
Okay.
So it is quite a big amount, but which is why I've set myself a high target. Ever the optimist. So yes, I am hoping our listeners, our beloved listeners and users of Phobe, and families and friends can support this fantastic initiative.
Now, you're doing this in 24 hours. And when we say 24 hours, you're going to be climbing up one mountain in England. Then you're going to, which will be the Scaffold Pike.
It's not. So we start at Ben Nevis.
Oh, you're starting at Ben Nevis, yeah, in Scotland.
Yeah, start in Scotland at 3 p.m. on Saturday.
Okay, 3 p.m.
And then we'll be down, inshallah, down Snowdon at 3 p.m. on Sunday. So there are 24 hours. That includes travel time. So the 24 hours includes us driving from Ben Nevis to Scaffold Pike and then onwards to Snowdon.
And
so
has this been done in the past? Have people done the Three Peaks Challenge in 24 hours?
There are people who've done it. There's quite a few people who've done it, actually.
Okay.
But I did it many years ago when I was in my early 20s.
So this was many years ago, early 20s. You are now moving forward, slightly older.
I'm now 36. I'm now 36, a few kilos heavier.
Okay.
The joints aren't as good as they used to be, but inshallah it'll be done. It'll be done along with...
What about the training prior to this? Have you had a medical checkup? Because folks listening in, me personally, I wouldn't suggest you just go climbing up mountains unless you've had some experience prior and you've done a bit of training. Are you training, Bilal?
So as I was telling Tariq earlier, the best way to train for it is to go Hajj.
Okay.
Go Hajj 2 weeks before. Yeah. Go Hajj 2 weeks before you climb.
Because the mental stamina.
Absolutely. So that helped quite a bit. Watch what you eat. Make sure you're a few pounds lighter, and just go for long walks. Go for as many long walks as you can in your walking boots, and that's the best way to train for it. To be honest, I know a lot of the guys have been training since November last year.
Okay.
So they've been on it, and it's like I said, it's a fantastic cause. The Three Peaks is just almost like a byproduct of what we're trying to achieve here, just to motivate our donors, the guys listening to the show now, motivate them into donating towards something. But the Disability Centre is the cause here, and I think that should be our focus.
Now, the Disability Centre is Friends of Bright Eyes, Phobe, which has a legacy in this town, mashallah, because I mentioned this earlier on in the show that as a teacher, I have seen so many young people gaining work experience at Friends of Bright Eyes, and those young people have gone on to do tremendous things. Even Brother Tariq, and we've got Brother Sufyan and various other brothers across the community that do such great work. And a lot of their work experience has come, and volunteering has come from Friends of Bright Eyes. It's actually set up so many young men and so many young women to do so many tremendous great things in the future. Would you agree with that, or am I just assuming?
No, absolutely. There's Sister Sabbath, as you know, she's very well known in Luton. There's so many other people, and the reason why that is because the barakah is in the project. The barakah comes from the project. It's not from these individuals that we're talking about, myself or the Beatty Hikers, the Summit Squad, all these other lovely individuals. The barakah is in the project, which is why it's helped so many individuals in their careers and in their lives, because it's such a wonderful blessing, and it's such a beautiful thing to be looking after children and adults with disabilities. It's such a beautiful thing, and it truly is life changing for not only the individuals that volunteer, but the families and who use the services. And that's the message I want to get across to our listeners today. Is like it's such a huge blessing, this project, and I really hope our listeners support and donate.
What I'm really pleased to see is normally a lot of the project support, which is very worthy and very much needed, seems to be overseas, and we're doing not as much at focusing on our local communities and helping to develop projects here. So this is quite refreshing to see. But Bilal, on a personal note, why for you is Phobe such a valuable service? What is it about Phobe for you that is making a difference?
I think for the Disability Centre itself, and not just Phobe. I mean, I've known Phobe a long time. I've been a volunteer. I've been a trustee. and I know the services. The back end of I lost my brother, as I was saying to Tariq this morning.
So sorry to
It'll
hear
be
that.
20 years this October to a disability, and I know the latter part of his life we did use folk services for a very short period of time. But the disability centre, the folk disability centre, is for me my motivation, because I've experienced it. I know the importance of the respite care and the vital services that folk provides, and how it does impact families and the service users. So having that personal experience, sharing that story this morning with Tariq, and again now, that's been my own motivation, the reason why I feel it's important, and the reason why I've been so vocal about it, which generally I'm not very vocal about projects I'm involved with, but this one I felt, because I'm part of the community, and I should share my story, and so that people, other service users, understand that they're not alone. And I think that's vital.
And I think what's really quite poignant is in your conversation is the fact that you've said that more and more people are needing a service like this. So there are obviously, there's cutbacks in so many services at the moment, which really does trickle down to the most needy and the most vulnerable. And I'm assuming that the disability community and the families affected are short of services.
Absolutely, massively. I mean, just with FOBE, I think it's something like this 40 families who are on the waiting list to use our services.
Wow.
And this is just in Luton, by the way.
40.
Just in Luton, 40. So you can imagine how much, literally bursting at the seams, the funding locally, local government and local council isn't there anymore, unfortunately. Which means there's a lack of services, which in turn means we can't support, or folk can't support the families it was or wants to. So it's a vital service. Just to give you some facts, 1 in 8 people across the UK have or are supporting a person who has a disability. That's 1 in 8 of us. That's a phenomenal number.
That is.
It's a massive number. And then it's those people who are, I think they say something like, the service users are those who happen to be of the lowest income. I think the national average for income is £19,000 or £20,000 a year. And that goes down to £15,000 for people who have a sibling or a disability child at home, because parents probably have to work part-time, the expenses are more, and all of those kind of things affect. There's a knock-on effect to so many things, so many levels, but the reality is we have people in this town who are in desperate need of our services, of the services of FOBE, and this disability centre is vital. It's absolutely vital that we pull this, off, and we make it happen, so we can deliver the services that these extremely special families get.
And what's quite significant is the history of FOBE. The FOBE may never have come about if it wasn't for one mother's love for her the child that she was caring at that time, who had a disability, but there was no services for her stepdaughter. And because there wasn't a service available, she began the journey in her front room to provide some service care. And moving on 20 to 25 years, I don't know how old FOBE is, but ever since I've come to Luton, I know of its existence, and I think it's coming up to 18 years now. We would never have had a service like this.
No, absolutely, and this is why I think Elizabeth will be on the rate on Inspire in the next couple of days to share her story. But people like Liz and key elders in our community have set the sort of stepping stone for FOBE. And like I said, because it was their clean intentions and the barakah in the project, the blessing in this project, which is why we are in a situation now that there's waiting lists for people wanting to use the services. And I truly believe with these keen sort of these people with keen intentions and the blessing in this project, we will get to a position where we can have a designated disability centre that will support these wonderful families across Luton.
MashaAllah and Inshallah, if I can say them both together at the same time. It's a very, very worthy project, fundraising that you're doing, and inshallah may it gain the barakah that it deserves. Folks, if you're just listening in, it's 11:22 and I'm speaking to Bilal Hussain, who is doing a very, very interesting challenge. He's doing the 3 Peaks challenge. He's not doing it on his own. He's got the Birdie hikers, I'm saying birdie, it's Birdie hikers, accompanying him. He's doing the 3 highest mountains, which are one is in Scotland, the other in England and Wales. It's 23 miles of climbing, and he has to do this in 24 hours. He's got to complete the challenge in 24 hours, people. And the whole purpose of this challenge is to raise his amount is £20,000, but I'm sure you're going to be able to raise a lot more than that, inshallah. And this is also in loving memory of your dear brother Hassan Ali Hussain, because this is what it says on the Just Giving page. There is a Just Giving page, guys. You can actually catch that Just Giving page on the Birdie hikers. I keep getting that muddled up. I keep saying Birdie because you guys.
You sound a bit Irish when you say that.
I know, I do. I totally do. Do you have an Irish mountain to climb? You need to include that. That's what it is. You need to do 4 mountains. No, do you know what? Say it yourself, Bilal. Say it yourself. Say
hello.
The Birdie hikers. You say it in your Luton accent.
Birdie hikers in it.
Yeah, Birdie hikers in it. Right, that's what this is all about, mashallah. It's a very, very exciting challenge. Now, I want to ask you about your adorable little boys. Have they been helping you with this challenge in any way? And I had the absolute pleasure of having them in the show. And my goodness, they could chat me out of this chair. What have the boys been doing since then? And when are they going back to school?
I think they go back tomorrow. Tomorrow. So we're kind of, we've been obviously busy with completing Hajj. So, mashallah, we've been blessed with so many lovely, lovely people who've visited us, and since we've been back, and lots of guests and stuff, so which has been absolutely lovely. So we've been a bit behind when it comes to school uniforms and getting them ready. But alhamdulillah, they're both good. They're very good. They're not quite looking forward to school. I think it starts tomorrow, because whilst we've been away, they've been on pure holiday mode over the summer, so they've had a great time.
Bless.
But yes, school tomorrow, and they have been sort of promoting it and pushing it with jumbling it all up. So yeah.
Oh, bless.
Hassan was telling somebody the other day that Dad's climbing the highest mountain in the world. It's even bigger than Mount Everest. So
that is so cool. He's your fan. Now, we are heading to the break, Bilal. I want to wish you the very best of luck, inshallah. We will be rolling out your challenge. It's definitely a worthy cause. Good luck to the boys, and lots of salams to your wonderful wife and your family. And inshallah, we look forward to hearing all about it when you on your return, and look forward to sharing this with our listeners. So, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Share the page on your,
inshallah, we'll do.
Social feed as well. Take care.
Take care. That was Brother Bilal, and we're heading off to a break. So join me straight after this.
This is Inspire on 105.1 FM. Catch a creative vibe on the Urban Kube with Sister Shemiza.
Good morning and assalamu alaikum. Thank you for staying with me on the Urban Kube this morning. It is 11:30 and we've just got half an hour left of the show this morning. It has been a very interesting show, from looking at climate change to climbing the highest peaks across Scotland, England and Wales in 24 hours with our local entrepreneur Bilal Hussain, who is actually helping to fundraise for a local charity, a very much needed service and charity called Friends of Bright Eyes, that many of you will be familiar with, because I have seen a number of young people volunteering for this absolutely very much needed service. So well done and good luck to brother Bilal Hussain, who will be doing this trek with the beardy hikers. I've got to get it right. He says I sounded a little bit Irish when I said that. I totally am not. The beardy hikers. He'll be joining them to do this challenge, and you can actually catch his Just Giving page on Facebook under Beardy Hikers, I think, or even just if you are friends with him, it's Bilal Hussain. Now, he did speak to Brother Tariq earlier on about this challenge, and so he'll be sharing further information about this. I think after the event as well, in order to continue the drive for making this fundraising task. He has around 20,000 to raise for this centre, mashallah, and I hope he will raise more, because it is a service that's greatly needed in our community of Luton, inshallah, and it has provided a number of service users the respite care that they greatly need. Now, it's the Three Peaks Challenge 2019, and Bilal Hussain will be climbing three mountains, one in Scotland, one in England and one in Wales in 24 hours. He has to complete this challenge. I'm getting nervous just reading about it, how absolutely tremendous, and it's just so exciting that he's willing to take on this challenge, and it's all for a good cause, for the local children, disabled community in Luton. Now, if you'd like to find out more, then please do contact us in the studio, and we'll send over the link via WhatsApp to you. Now, he wasn't the only person I spoke to earlier on today. I also had the pleasure of speaking to Maria Zafar, who talked about Hajj and climate change and the need for us as Muslims to kind of really take the seriousness of climate change on board, because in future years' time it will actually affect the way pilgrims will be doing Hajj in regards to the heat, and the heat is it will be very, very hot out there. So that was Maria Zafar talking to us about Hajj and climate change. It was a very informative conversation that we had with her. Now, all the conversations on today's show will be repeated at 8 p.m. this evening, so do tune in, and we do have a podcast that goes straight out. The Facebook Live is still open, so you're very welcome to join in with the conversations and add your comments on there, which I will read. Now, the WhatsApp number to the show is 07779481822. The time is 11:33, guys, and you're listening to the Urban Kube with me, Shemiza, taking you all the way up to 12 o'clock. On today's show, I'm joined by another tremendous guest who's joining us all the way from Birmingham this morning, so it's an absolute pleasure to have his company. Now, he's actually going to be talking about a number of poignant subjects, and in particular, history is something that I'm very, very passionate about. As a child, I absolutely detested it, but the older I've got, the more I've started reading into it, the more I feel I'm really, really coming to terms with what's going on around me, which I think is so important. Now, Jahan Mahmood is the gentleman that I'm going to be speaking to very, very shortly. He's a historian and his specialism is military history. He's also a counter-terrorism specialist who has advised the Home Office and the Royal Military Academy in Sandhurst. He'll be joining me today to share the military contribution and influence of Muslims in the war effort of World War II, and how this knowledge can counteract the negative narrative around immigration, Islamophobia and racism in 29 Brexit Britain. We'll also be discussing his role around the counter-terrorism prevent strategy and why it hasn't been effective in engaging with Muslims and why it needs to change. And we'll also be finding out from him why he feels it's critical for more Muslims to engage with the media professionally and represent their voices and narrative. Lots to talk about there. Without further ado, it's an absolute pleasure to have Jahan join us this morning. Assalamu alaikum, Jahan.
Hi, Shemiza.
Thank you so very much for joining us this morning. Now, I understand yesterday was 80 years. 80 years ago was when World War II started. Quite significant. It actually changed the way we view the world today. But what has been quite significant for me in the last few years is finding out the actual significant role Muslims had played and South Asians had played in fighting for democracy, the freedoms that we have in the world today. And this is something that you've been quite passionate about, and you've been actually researching and sharing this knowledge.
Yeah, it's actually, so it was 80 years exactly to yesterday, which was 1st of September, and on 1939, the German army moved into or invaded Poland. And then 2 days later, Britain and France declared war on Nazi Germany for doing so. And I'm afraid it's not quite as easy as saying that, that the Indians, or the South Asians in this case, fought for freedoms and liberties. I suppose the reason it being is that the Indians were suppressed. They were subjugated in their own country. And one of the things that I think is very important to make clear to listeners is that, there's a lot of confusion around whether this army of 2.5 million from modern-day India, Pakistan and Bangladesh was a volunteer force. And unfortunately it wasn't.
Wow.
There was forced conscription that took place. Boys as young as 14 and 15 were kidnapped.
Goodness me.
For Britain, and my uncle was one of them. He was actually 16 years old at the time.
How did it make you feel when you'd actually discovered that your uncle at the age of 16, was he kidnapped? Is that correct?
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Wow.
He was
Forced to fight.
Recruiters. Yes. Made me feel very upset. I was heartbroken, to be fair, because the first thing I was thinking about was, one, it was how ruthless, and second was how difficult it must have been for his family. And he lost his mother quite early on. So my father lost his mother when he was just quite young. I think he was under 10. His older brother then gets kidnapped by British recruiters as soon as he's finished his equivalent of GCSE at school. And my grandfather had no idea that they'd taken his son to the war front.
Oh my goodness.
So for my grandfather, it was just, he had no idea what was going on until he returned from the war front in Burma, fighting against the Imperial Japanese Army. And he was left with all sorts of psychological trauma. But my grandfather said they could have at least told me that they were taking my son, and he was very hard done, to be fair. And
how horrific, not knowing where your child is and then finding out they'd been kidnapped to fight for somebody else's war. When did you get to discover this information, and did this inspire you to do further research around military history and these stories that have been hidden away and not told?
Yeah, I think a young lad sparked it off, to be fair. It was a guy that I was working with. He used to keep kids away from drug dealers and crime at night, so I'd hire a snooker hall, and it was in there one day, this young man was looking at his phone and laughing, huddled around with his friends, and it was the beheading of a British contractor called Ken Bigley. And I just said to him that, look, it's not really funny, come on, the guy's innocent. And he said he's not innocent, he's part of an entire movement that has gone into Iraq, and that's an illegal war. And he was a remarkably young lad at the time, I think he was 14 or 15, but he says, if you're going to try to convince me that I'm British, you might as well forget about it right now. And I'm Pakistani, I'm a Muslim, I'm a brown man, all the things that I hated in Britain. So there's no really chance you're going to convince me. So I think it was him that really kind of motivated me to search for a narrative that could connect him and a lot of that generation. And then, to be fair, including myself, I didn't feel very British, it has to be said. And as I started to go through the different campaigns and the casualties and looked at the war dead, I started to realize there's a pattern here. And a lot of these Muslim soldiers in particular were coming from Pakistan, and in descending order, it starts off with Rawalpindi, Jhelum, Attock, Abbottabad. These cities are in Pakistan, right? So it was then I started to realize, okay, now there's a connection. So he was from Jhelum, so I made that one connection. And then I started to find that the war dead, certainly in Europe, fighting against some of Hitler's elite troops, were as young as 15 years. And I just thought, oh my God, he was 15 years old when I was trying to protect him from, these criminal fraternities. And I thought, well, look, I think I've got a story here. So I started to research it more. My supervisor at university kind of like inspired me to continue. And then, unfortunately, I did hit a bit of a brick wall because people that I trusted and thought I knew growing up, I thought they might support what I was doing, but they tried to put me off it and said, you're not going to do anything with this. It isn't going to go anywhere. Don't even bother looking into the Muslim contribution. And I just thought, you know what? You're going to have to do a lot better than that if you're going to try and discourage me. So I just carried on going. And then I am now known as the guy who pioneered the Muslim contribution, because I gave my first paper on the Muslim contribution, the war against Nazi Germany, in Oxford University.
Wow.
2009 April. So, and then after that, I think it was later that year, I think it was September 2009, that the BBC produced the first video, the first film documentary on the Muslim contribution. And so we got the ball rolling, but unfortunately I later found out that the BBC didn't do it for reasons to try and, challenge divisions across society, but rather to try and help recruit Muslims into the British Army today. So I felt a little bit hard done, to be fair, because I thought they were doing it genuinely.
But it hasn't
help raise awareness.
But it hasn't stopped you, though, has it, Jahan? You have used this material to make a difference to many young people's lives, in particular that young person who had a misunderstanding of who he was. Did you go back and share this information with him, and how has this benefited young people?
Oh yeah, I did. I shared it with him, and it just made him feel like a stakeholder, like in modern day Britain. He said, well, I didn't know this, and at least I can walk down the streets with my head held up high, and that I'm not continually interrogated and having the finger pointed at me. So it gave him a certain sense of strength and confidence, which is exactly what I wanted to do. Because growing up as a young man, I was told to, as they would say, pee off back home. What the hell are you doing here, you pee? The P word was thrown around a lot. And I didn't know what to say as a kid, and it really upset me. But I didn't know we had given our lives, and so many Muslim soldiers had fought from across the globe, not just from, modern-day Pakistan, Bangladesh, or India, or even Afghanistan, for that matter, in the First World War. But I just thought, I wish I'd known this before. My father wouldn't have been brutally beaten. I wouldn't have been beaten up as a kid. And so many others wouldn't have been forced to eat mud, as in literally had their heads stuck in the ground. And as I started to build on the narrative and visit schools and colleges and mosques, I actually had a lot of positive feedback from Muslim students saying, we were feeling like there was,
no sense of belonging.
Targeted. Yeah, we were feeling targeted. But, they're like Islamophobia is like increasing, and racism is increasing, and you've actually given us something to reflect on and for us to challenge our haters with without getting angry, because we feel like we want to get angry, and when people get angry, often the last resort is punches are thrown, and I wanted to avoid that. I wanted to empower and equip and educate people,
and
so that they
it's verbal ammunition that you're enabling, equipping these young people to kind of address their sense of belonging and identity to this country. So it's obviously made them a lot more confident. Going back to the research that you've done now, you mentioned that you are working at a university, or I'm mentioning that now. You're a former lecturer at University of Birmingham. How has that enabled you to kind of reach out to young people? Have you always worked around young people, or is in a youth work setting, or is it just via being a lecturer?
Well, no, I was at the University of Birmingham as a visiting lecturer, so it was part-time, and they still call me in, so a number of universities will still call me in from time to time, but it's not a full-time post that I had, and but it certainly assisted me in my research skills because I'd done my degree at University of Birmingham. And it did certainly help me on that front. But in regards to the young people, I suppose it started when I was living in a predominantly white area, in one of the leafy suburbs of Birmingham. And I recall there was a couple of kids who were picking on some Pakistani lads and calling them, Paki and so forth. And I just thought, I've suffered this racism for years, and at first it made me upset. But then I thought, you know what, it's not sensible for me to start having a go at these kids. So, I was an okay footballer. I was pretty decent and pretty quick off the mark, had a certain level of skill, and I just thought, maybe I could, because these kids were kicking a ball around the street, so I thought, okay, there's a park just around the corner. I went out and brought a football and a few bibs and cones and took both groups of kids, this group of white and black kids and the Pakistani kids, together to the park, and I started playing football with them and coaching them. So these kids then said, are you Pakistani? And I was saying, yeah. It's like, okay. So as soon as they realized I was, it just completely and utterly changed their view of Pakistanis, and they were able to get on with these kids a lot better. They were able to break that kind of mental block that they may have had, which was probably more than likely encouraged by the parents or even at school or the media. And I was able to get through it, and I think that was like 1998. Right? So that's where I think it really started. So it wasn't, for me, when I start engaging with young men loitering around the streets of Ladypool Road, Birmingham, and some of the surrounding areas, inner city areas that is, it wasn't a far cry from what I'd already done, until eventually I realized that there was another group of kids that I was, I suppose, destined to meet, who were pretty bad. They were into beating up just kids coming out of school, assaulting young girls, selling cannabis, getting into trouble with the police, fighting, and that was the group that I was kind of assigned to in the end. And that's where that journey begins for me, and then that eventually leads to advising the government, because I've worked with so many young men by now that they wanted to get a feel for why they may be angry after, the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, and what sentiments they may have against.
What is it that made these young people angry and just hang out on the streets, and what difference were you able to bring to their life that you were able to advise to the Home Office?
Well, I wasn't able to save them all, which was quite distressing for me. I think it was their home situation more than anything. Father was often taxi driver out all night, sleeping during the day. There's a lack of interaction. So, these boys, and in some cases, girls, their sisters, they just weren't getting much attention from their father.
So it's down to parenting.
So parenting was one of the major issues, for sure. The worst culprits in that gang were kids whose fathers weren't around. That I can confirm. And that's it in the case of the worst culprits. The others, who were just like the sheep, they just, to be fair, they were just dependent on them, and they just went along with whatever they were saying.
So
but the main troublemakers had real daddy issues.
Did you go back into the communities and address this issue to community leaders, community members, trying to get in contact with the families to create this change?
We didn't really have community leaders. We just had talking shops. I mean, that's one of the reasons in the end I ended up in the media, is because I was sick and tired of hearing some of these first generation, Muslim self-appointed spokespeople. So they weren't going to do much. But I did go and see the families of these kids. And, I would talk to their parents. Their mothers would be like, it was like they were on their last leg. They just couldn't deal with it anymore. They
desperate with the situation.
Very desperate. I mean, I had mothers actually I did. I had mothers sobbing, crying on the phone, saying, my son's just done broke someone's car window.
This is unfortunate.
Nabbed someone's phone. And the police are, like, at my door. And I can't even speak English properly. And my husband's at work. I had cases like that. And then I would have to leave at night. And I remember one particular case, leaving home at about 11:30 to go and have a chat with this mother about her boy breaking a Sikh gentleman's car and nabbing his phone. I mean, he got the phone in the end, but it was just the distress he put his mom through, and the fact that his mom called me because she didn't know where else to go at that time, and I was ultimately involved with her, as in trying to keep her boy on the straight and narrow. And I was quite privileged that I was quite happy that she called me.
At least there was somebody that she could speak to, and this kind of brings me on to like the work that you're actually doing in the media, because you did say that you struggle. There were no community leaders to provide this support, and that's why you had to kind of make your place in the media as quite a prominent social and political commentator on issues that are affecting the Muslim community, which you've done very successfully. And how has that journey been for you, and what difference and change have you seen from actually talking about issues that are affecting Muslims in this present climate?
That's a question I've never been asked before. That's a really good question. It's been kind of hard because I had no formal training. I was lucky enough to teach at university, lucky enough to be the son of a son to a father who had his own business in a supermarket, and I was engaging with customers on a daily basis from 13 to about 18, 13 to 19, and that certainly gave me a kind of an improved level of communication skills. But nothing prepares you really for the media, because you're put on the spot. A lot of the interviews are live, and you have to try and kind of hustle your way through them and hope that you do the best and you represent your community well. So on the first occasion, I think it must have been about 2013, and it wasn't what I would say a major interview. It was something to do with 13 people being rounded up and accused of a set of terrorism allegations, right? And I come across like I was almost, to some degree, appeasing, and not really holding also the authorities account for some of the mistakes that they made. And I just felt, and then there was more for me. There was like, the community should do more, but I wasn't so concerned, I suppose, at foreign policy and the impact that had, Islamophobia and years of racism. But when I hit the 2014 mark, I think things started to change. And that's when I did my first major interview. Actually, to tell a lie, I think my first major interview was when Lee Rigby was killed, and the Prime Minister is talking from 10 Downing Street and issues a statement to the entire nation. And a team of journalists sat in my living room at the time, and they say, "You're on next, Mr. Mahmood." And I thought they were joking, and I was like, I wasn't prepared for this.
And you threw yourself in the deep end. But I recall that interview, and very interesting. And what's really quite significant is the fact that you're having to you're representing so many people. So that must be a real burden on your shoulders to make sure that you say the correct thing. But what I want to, because we are heading to the end of the show, we've got about 3 minutes left. Jahan, what's really quite important is the fact that your thoughts on the prevent strategy, because this is one thing that constantly Muslims are always being questioned about or under scrutiny. We're seeing so many negative stories coming about this, like counter-extremism strategy. But what do you say? What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that Muslims should engage with the prevent strategy to advise the government. You don't have to take the money. You should at least advise them on what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. Okay. I think there's been a massive failure in engaging with the right people. I think the Tory government in particular has led on that kind of that initiative, and it's a very negative one, because they're not engaging with mainstream Muslims. They're happy to talk to the people that are going to be singing off the same hymn sheet, and that's not getting them anywhere.
Of course, it's going round and round in circles.
Yeah, and I think the true litmus test is, can you go into areas and engage with extremists via prevent? No, they'll shut the door on you, and they may even spit in your face saying, are you working for the same government that has bombed innocent people across the world, and you're now telling us that we're not allowed to have any feelings towards these people? And I think for me, on a personal note, I think it's upsetting when prevent frontline staff have said, and personnel have said, that we're here to promote British values like freedom of expression. But as soon as some people are vocal about foreign policy, they're deemed as mad or extremist.
Which is so
And
sad.
you can't criticise Prevent. So where's the freedom of expression? And myself.
We're heading to the end of the show, Jahan, and it's so unfortunate. I knew I needed 2 hours with you. Thank you so much, Jahan, and I do feel that we need to continue this conversation, but for today, inshallah, it's Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so very much for joining us and the amazing work that you do. That was Jahan Mahmood, and this is the end of the show. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at Inspire FM Luton.